Dark Age Drama Part 3. How does the drama of the Last Kingdom and Vikings match up to the facts? The principal English sources of facts are the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle and Bishop Asser's Life of Alfred. Both are accounts written at the time or shortly after the events they record. Vikings starts with raids to east and west. In the first episode, Ragnar and his brother Rollo are raiding to the east. We don't see Vikings go east again until season 6. Ragnar's raid to the west corresponds to the attack on the monastery on Lindisfarne in 793. This is often regarded as the beginning of the Viking Age, or at least its intrusion into English history. Norsemen began to raid parts of England in such force that by 807 the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle was already referring to them as the army. Vikings features Egbert, who was king of Wessex from 802 until 839. He was certainly ambitious and wily. He made Wessex into the predominant Anglo-Saxon kingdom, passing Mercia, which had peaked under Offa, famous for his dyke or earthen border with Wales. Under Egbert, Wessex absorbed Sussex, Essex and Kent about 827. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle proclaimed Egbert as the 8th king to beat Bretwalda, which may have meant ruler of the Britons rather than the English. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle noted that he fought against Northumbria, Mercia, East Anglia, both North and West Wales, and compelled them all to peaceful submission. He had mixed results against the Danes. They were masters of the field at Charmouth in 833, but at Hengerston in 835 he put to flight both the Welsh and the Danes. But one thing he was not was Alfred's mentor. Although he was his grandfather, he died 9 years before Alfred was born. In Season 3 of Vikings, the action remains in the west, with the first Viking raid on Paris, which the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle noted was in 845. They captured the city, but were paid a ransom of 7,000 livres, or pounds, to leave. On their way back, they pillaged the Abbey of Saint-Bertin, which recorded their leader as Regan Harris. According to the sagas, Ragnar's trick of emerging from his coffin to open the city gates was used by Rollo against a town in Normandy. But in Vikings Season 3, Episode 9, it's Ragnar. There were other attacks on Paris, including a siege from 885 to 6, but the first attack was the only successful one. What is shown in Vikings is a fusion of the first attack and the later siege. In England, the action escalated in 854, when instead of going home after the gang days, the army stayed over winter on the Isle of Sheppey. In 865, it overran Kent, which made peace with them. This meant paying them off with thousands of pounds of precious metal, an expensive but only temporary reprieve. This became notorious as Danegeld, although it was usually silver, broken up into pieces known as hack silver. It was valued by its weight in pounds. In 866, the army moved into East Anglia, where the East Anglians made peace by paying Danegeld in the form of horses. This made the army mobile. The same year, another army moved into East Anglia, known as the Great Summer Army. It was led not by a Ragnarsson, but by Guthrum. The next year, the army moved into Northumbria and the story of the Last Kingdom. In Vikings, the army led by Ivar, Ubba and Sigurd, which arrived to revenge Ragnar in Vikings Season 4, Episode 17. This corresponds to what the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle calls the Great Heathen Army. Uhtred's father is shown in a brave but futile charge on a shield wall before he dies. Incidentally, the defensive shield wall he attacks isn't regarded as realistic. Trained warriors could use a shield wall to attack, especially if they had more men behind them to push. In 868, the army moved into Mercia. By 871, Guthrum's army had moved into Wessex, where Athelwulf and his younger brother Alfred fought 9 battles against them, but they too ended up making peace. In Vikings Season 5, Episode 8, Alfred argues for ships to deter Viking raids. The first mention of Alfred's use of ships in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle is in 875, when he is recorded as going to sea with armed ships, intercepting 7 rovers, taking 1 and dispersing the rest. In 876, Rollo, or Roland, as the French inscriptions name him, is recorded as penetrating Normandy, where he would reign for 50 winters. In Vikings Season 4, he and Ragnar are on opposite sides in France or Francia. The treaty which created Normandy in 911 may have been acceptance of the fact that they had already taken control of the area. Then comes the dramatic year of 878, in which Uhtred becomes involved with Alfred. First, Guthrum's army made a surprise attack on Chippenham, not Winchester, at Christmas. Bishop Asser's Life of Alfred and the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle agree that Alfred was forced to flee to a work at Athelney. From this legendary refuge in the Somerset marshes, he continued to resist until he learnt of the victory at Kinwit. According to Bishop Asser's Life of Alfred, in a battle in Devon, the brother of Halfdan and Ingvar was slain and his raven banner was taken. According to Bernard Cornwall, Kinwit was the defeat of the last of the Lothbrocks. In the Last Kingdom, Uhtred is inserted into what was probably Ealdorman Odda of Devon's victory. It may have been this success which inspired Alfred to summon the men of Somerset, Wiltshire, and Hampshire at Egbert's Stan or Stone. They rallied in force, and Alfred led them to Eddington, where, even without Uhtred's berserker tactics, they won a decisive battle. In the words of Bishop Asser, fighting fiercely with a compact shield wall against the entire Viking army, they destroyed the Vikings with great slaughter and pursued those who fled as far as the stronghold. This was Chippenham, where Alfred besieged them for 14 days, until they sought peace on his conditions, which were they had to give up hostages, leave Wessex, and Guthrum had to be baptized. In Vikings Season 6, Episode 20, it is Fitzurk who is baptized. These are the terms of a verbal agreement which was formalized later as the Treaty of Wedmore. It recognized existing Anglo-Saxon and Danish territories, the division also known as Danelaw. In Vikings Season 6, Ivar negotiates with Alfred. This bears little relation to the sources. Neither is there any mention of Ivar or Eimar's presence in Dublin, in Vikings, although there are threats coming from the west in the Last Kingdom. The Treaty of Wedmore gave Alfred a respite which left him free to work on a more effective defence against Viking depredations. He did this by building burhs and organising the fyrd. Burhs were towns fortified by walls and ditches. He improved the local manpower, known as the fyrd, by transforming them from farmers into a militia capable of manning the burhs. Even untrained men could resist the Danes from within fortifications. The gangs of Danes, fierce though they were, tended to lose interest in siege warfare and drift away in search of easier prey. It was an effective policy which his children, Edward and Athelflaed, used to reclaim significant amounts of territory. In Book 4 of the Last Kingdom, Sword Song, Uhtred is responsible for building burhs at Cookham on both sides of the Thames. Still has to fight for Edward at Farnham in 890, Season 3, Episode 10, then for Edward and Athelflaed at Tettenhall in 410, Season 4, Episode 4. Viking raids subsided after Athelstan, assisted in fiction by Uhtred of Bebbanburg, won the Battle of Brunanburh in 937. According to the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, there they slew 5 kings and 7 earls. This united the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, including the Danelaw, as England. Without conflict between Saxons and Danes, England prospered. The St. Brice's Day massacre of possibly unoffending Danes was authorized by King Athelred II in 1002. He is known as Athelred the Unready. This is probably a misunderstanding of unready or ill-advised. Athelred certainly wasn't ready for King Sweyn's second invasion in 1013. The spectacular Battle of London Bridge features in Vikings Valhalla Season 1, Episode 5. It happened in 1014. The bridge may have been destroyed and rebuilt several times before. The visualization of the river shows it as wider back then, as indeed it was, until much later developments such as embankments. What remained of Roman London came down to the river, but not its walls. Svein was succeeded by his son Cnut, or Canute, who arrived with another fleet of 160 ships in 1016. Athelred's son Edmund Ironside fought back effectively enough to bring a truce, which divided the kingdom between himself and Cnut. This also features in Vikings Valhalla Season 1, Episode 5. But when Edmund died, England became part of Cnut's North Sea Empire. Ironically, according to the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, Cnut took a fleet manned by English thanes to conquer Norway in 1028. In 1042, the English throne passed peacefully to another of Athelred's sons, Edward, known as the Confessor for his piety. His death in 1066 triggered a succession crisis which resulted in the Norman conquest. The Normans were themselves descendants of Viking raiders. They defeated a king, Harold Godwinson, that the English Witan had appointed. King Harold had faced twin threats, in the north from the Viking Harold Hardrada, and in the south from William of Normandy. In Dark Age Drama Part 4, we will see how the achievement Alfred, the only English king ever called the Great, defies the Dark Age description. Thank you for watching.